Let's talk about Alain de Botton. He's a Swiss-born British philosopher and creator of School of Life. De Botton's focus is primarily on the philosophy of everyday life, of the common person. And for that same reason, he receives a lot of criticism. People say that philosophy isn't supposed to be for masses. It's supposed to be for elites, specific people who can discuss these fancy ideas in a very nuanced manner. And he tends to oversimplify the ideas. But I don't think he cares about that criticism, because it seems from his writings and his speeches that more than philosopher, he wants to become a teacher. And he wants to be a teacher in the sphere of life. He wants to show us how to live a good life. I'm going to briefly talk about his books. In the last 25 years, he's written quite a few, and I think a lot of them are quite interesting. So let me start with his first book, Essays in Love. The book came out when he was only 23. I think the year was 1992 or 93. It's written in a novel format, but it's not exactly the kind of novel you expect. The author follows the story of a couple, but at the same time introduces philosophy at every step to explain certain situations. For example, initially there is a lot of romance in a relationship and how that changes over a period of time, how there are fights, how there are different scenarios in a relationship. So this book was written in 1993, and almost 2 decades later he wrote another book called The Course of Love, in which he further continues this love story and takes it to the point where a relationship, long-term relationship or marriage begins. So that follows from the first book, and you see various lessons and philosophy from what you can learn from a relationship. It's very helpful, both these books. And as I said, de Botton wants you to learn at every step. So according to him, love is not something we are born with. It's a skill. At least the romantic love, it's a skill that we acquire, and he's helping us develop that skill through his books. There's another book which he wrote in late 90s. It's called How Proust Can Change Your Life. It's a very unusual kind of book. It's more like a literary analysis of Marcel Proust, French novelist, along with some analysis of his life. So what Alain de Botton is trying to do here is extract certain learnings from Marcel Proust's work and his life, and helping us understand what we can learn from there. Later, he also wrote a book called The Consolations of Philosophy, where he combines learnings of all the Western philosophers from way back, from the Greek philosophy time to 19th century Nietzsche, and then he extracts very simple lessons from all these philosophers and their writings. Then there is a book called The Art of Travel, in which he discusses why we travel and how we can travel better. He tries to understand the psychology when we travel. What are the things we look forward to, and why exactly are we traveling? It's a very interesting book if you like to travel or if you want to understand traveling. Then there is a book called Status Anxiety. It's one book which I would recommend to everybody these days, because In modern times, in the times of social media, everybody is anxious and full of envy. We are constantly evaluating ourselves in terms of how we are doing in comparison with other people, what is our status, and are we doing good enough, are we doing better, are we doing worse. This book is clearly a therapy for all those kind of anxieties which we experience. Then de Botton, since he's interested in art and architecture, he wrote a book called The Architecture of Happiness. And as you would expect, he's more interested in the psychology. So he understands some architecture, he talks about it, but then he goes back to psychology and tries to explain what impact certain architecture has on psychology of human beings. So on one hand, this book could be read by people who aspire to become architects to better understand architecture, but at the same time, people who are not really into architecture but they want to understand the buildings, the surroundings, and human psychology with regard to that. Another book called, a very short book called The Pleasures and Sorrows of Work. This again deals with the challenges of modern life, how we spend a lot of time at work, but we really don't think that much about it and don't really care about, plan about how to go about it. Since de Botton is an atheist, he's also written a book on atheism. It's called Religion for Atheists. But unlike many other atheists, he doesn't outright reject any religion. Instead, he tries to learn from them and he tries to see how religions impart wisdom and how they educate people and masses. He tries to use those tools in his works. So that's a very interesting point of view, to learn from religion and apply logically and reasonably for other purposes. Two of his quite interesting books I read recently. One of them is called The News, the other is The School of Life, which is based on his project, The School of Life. The News talks about the good and bad aspects of the news that we are consuming today. He analyzes it in such a way that you understand clearly what the purpose of news should be and what we get and how we can consume news better. The School of Life, his project, which is a YouTube channel, a website, and now the actual schools and offices they have in many parts of the world. It aims to educate adults, especially the emotional education, the emotional health is being taken care of. But at the same time, the school helps you equip with certain life skills, which probably no other organization does at the moment. They have multiple courses, they have a number of lessons which you can read or watch on YouTube, and then you would see there is plenty of things to learn when it comes to emotional health. It seems to me from de Botton's writing that his focus, as I said, is very much on education. Even when he's telling a story, he's deliberately doing certain things to educate people about some idea or some kind of concept. He's very careful that his writing is simple and precise, and he has said that in some of his interviews that every time he writes, he sees and checks that a particular sentence is simple, then he checks it's quite interesting, maybe it's funny, or at least it generates some kind of curiosity in the reader. And if it doesn't pass those tests, then it goes back to the workshop and he works on that particular sentence once again. So that's a very good advice for aspiring writers. You have to work very hard on every sentence that you write. Make sure that you really engage your reader. Also, it's quite clear from his writing that his appreciation for art and beauty in general. He talks about art all the time, and just like religion, he tries to find ways in which we can educate masses through art. In fact, he combines the two. He believes that what religions have done over centuries is that they have used art forms such as paintings, songs, and stories to educate masses about certain ideas. And that's what he thinks art should be about. It should be about education. He's also very concerned about morality, kindness in general. So he focuses on kindness and how we can have empathy towards other human beings, especially in our personal relationships. So I think that remains his primary area. He works very hard on the relationship aspect of every human being. And in those relationships also, especially the romantic ones, he sees a lot of challenges over there. There could be a lot of conflicts between two partners, and he tries to work on them very carefully, and he offers some kind of therapy to the readers. It's also quite obvious that de Botton has some Freudian influence, because you would notice that at every point he is going back to childhood. All the qualities, all the flaws, all the traits of our personality, when he's analyzing all those things, he's going back to childhood and then deriving some sort of conclusion from there. So that seems to me some kind of blank slate theory, that human beings are like blank slates, and whatever happens to us, whatever script that is written on our minds, that is through in our childhood, through other people, through our parents and teachers, and that's how we become adults and carry that script. A lot of people, a lot of scientists might disagree with that claim. I'm not even sure if Alain de Botton completely agrees with this, but it seems from his work that he's focusing a lot on childhood aspect of psychology. All in all, I would say there are plenty of books to be read, and you should try that. If you like to read something romantic, some kind of love story, I would recommend the first two books I discussed, Essays in Love and followed by The Course of Love. But if you are more into philosophy or non-fiction, then the other works that I mentioned would be fun for you. And if you do get time, you should check out the School of Life. It's a wonderful place to learn life skills. So I'll take your leave with that. Thank you.